Thank you so much for making the time, Rabbi Kaplan.
My pleasure. So I'm Rabbi David Kaplan. I'm a Hasidic Orthodox Jewish rabbi. I'm a little bit out of the box, so I'm not what you typically get when you speak to an Orthodox, Hasidic rabbi. So I may give the wrong impression, but it is what it is. This is me. Right now I'm wearing my Hasidic weekday hat, but I wear some other hats too, and I thought I'd show them. This is my fire helmet. I'm also a volunteer firefighter, EMT, chaplain, fire police officer, and so forth. I volunteer also in EMS. I'm the director of an EMS service. I'm a musician. I do rabbinical counseling. I do lots of different things. So that's why. Anyway, instead of talking about myself, I thought maybe I would tell a traditional Hasidic story or two to give a little bit of a feeling for what that is. So here's my first story. It's a story told by a Hasidic master known as Nachman of Breslov, and I think it's very appropriate for today's time. The story goes like this. The advisors of a king discovered that whoever was going to eat from anything that grew in the upcoming year, any of the grains, was going to go insane. People try to explain this as some sort of fungal thing that can infect grain, which causes a hallucination effect similar to LSD. In any event, they realized that whoever's going to eat from the bread in the upcoming year is going to go insane. So they couldn't possibly store enough untainted grain for the whole country. But the king's people said, you know what, let's store enough grain for our palace, for the king and the king's people. So at least, the rest of the country might be crazy, but at least we'll be normal. The king says, no, that's not a good solution. Because if we do that and you end up storing enough grain only for us, so the whole country, they're going to be crazy. We're going to be normal. And since they're all crazy, they're all acting crazy and we're acting normal and we're just a few, they're going to think that we're crazy. So instead, what we need to do is we need to all eat the same grain. We need to all eat the same bread. They'll be crazy. We'll be crazy. It'll be a whole country of crazy people. And since everyone's crazy, we'll all think that we're normal. But we need to know that we're crazy. So how are we going to know that we're crazy? We're gonna make marks on each other's foreheads, some sort of permanent ink. And I'm gonna look at you and you're gonna look at me, and at least we're gonna know we're crazy. And so that's what they did. So I think that's a very apropos story for today's world, because we live, unfortunately, in a crazy world where, terrorists are considered heroes and heroes are considered terrorists, and people defending themselves are considered terrorists, and the people who are killing babies are considered heroes. We live in this crazy world. And sometimes people even have to, in order to survive, they have to sort of pretend to go along with it, which I'm not okay with, but let's just say that that's what some people are doing. At least know that we're crazy. Know that this is not okay. Know this is not normal. How much time do I have left? Because I can just go.
Stop counting track. I was so careful at the beginning of the hour. I'm just making this up. Let's take two minutes.
Okay. So I have one more short story, which is on a totally different vein, but I'm going to tell the story because I think it explains something about where at least I might be coming from, some Hasidic people might be coming from. There was a famous Hasidic master. He was the one who founded the school of thought of Hasidism. It isn't really a new thing. It's based on Kabbalah, if you've heard of that. But it was founded as a sort of a movement about, in the 1700s by a Hasidic master known as Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov. And his students would ask him a lot of questions. So one day, one of his students came to him and he says, Rabbi, you say that we can learn something from everyone, from everything, every opportunity. So he thought he stumped the rabbi here because, when you're talking to religious leaders, like who is the person that the religious person can't identify with, can't relate with the most, is the atheist. That's sort of universal in all religions. Like we can relate to someone from another religion, but the atheist is like, that's just too far for them to relate to. So he thought he stumped the rabbi, and he says, Rabbi, what can we learn from an atheist? He says, what can we learn from an atheist? I'll tell you what we can learn from an atheist. Well, you see someone who needs help. So a lot of times the religious person will say, well, God will help him, or give him a blessing. May God help you. he sighs and I'll say a prayer for you. Thoughts and prayers today, everyone. Thoughts and prayers. But the atheist, he can't do that. He can't say, I'll say a prayer for you, thoughts and prayers. If the atheist thinks that someone needs help, he's got to go and help because he doesn't believe there's any deity, there's any God that's going to help him. He's got to do it. He says, so when you see someone in trouble, don't be the religious person. Be the atheist. Help them. And he says, and that's really being the religious person because that's what God wants. God didn't put us in the world so that we can say, oh, God will help. God will help. Oh, I'll say a prayer for you. God put us in this world so that we can help people. And that's what we learn from the atheist. So be like the atheist. So
today you heard from the master to think like an atheist. Fantastic. I really wish each one of these speakers today took up a whole class because this is so incredible. Thank you so much, Rabbi Kaplan. And
you're very welcome.
I hope we stay in touch and let's be in touch. Thank you so much. So maybe we'll take one or two questions and then we'll say goodbye if there are.
But it might be too silly. I don't know. There's no such thing. I had a question for Rabbi Kaplan. So I was so excited that you told 2 Hasidic stories because I love Hasidic stories. And I was curious if you have a favorite. And so which one is it and why?
And going to frame because I don't think it's you.
Hi.
I'm being asked a lot of favorite questions today.
Those are always the hardest.
My worst questions. It's like people ask me about EMS all the time. When they hear I'm an EMS, I'm very active. I do calls almost every day. And they say, what's the worst call you've been on? I start going through all the horrible things that I've seen. I don't know, anyway, what is my favorite Hasidic story? Well, I would say that there's one that I really enjoy telling. I make it take about 20 minutes. I can probably speed it up to a minute so that I can answer it quickly, but also tell the story. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Now when I tell a story, I have no sense of time. So feel free to cut me off.
Okay.
The story, some of you may have heard. It's called The Turkey Prince. I see Rabbi Brick is of course that he enjoys the story. Okay. So in short, I usually like to make this take a long time, but I'll tell the story really short. Basically, the son of a king decided one day he lost his mind. He took off all his clothes. He went under the table in the king's, grand ballroom, began pecking crumbs off the floor. They got the doctor in, the psychologist in, the psychiatrist, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. He says, I'm a turkey. And they spend time trying to convince him he's a human, and he's a turkey. There's no convincing him. They got the top psychiatrists, the top doctors. There's nothing doing. So the king sends out proclamations in the kingdom. He's already embarrassed, but everyone knows about it. There's nothing he can do now. He sends out proclamations. Whoever can cure my son is going to get this huge fortune. So different people try. Everybody fails. Finally, one old, wise sage comes. He says, I'll cure your son, but you got to trust me. And you need to do a few things. I need some things prepared in advance. And, I can cure your son. Just, you got to trust me. Okay. I'm going to do things that sound really weird. They say, okay. They prepared all the things that he asked for. And the wise man goes into the grand ballroom where the king's son is sitting naked under the table. And he takes all his clothes off and he sits naked under the table together with the prince. And the prince is eating crumbs off the floor and the old sage is eating crumbs off the floor. And the king is like, oh, great. Now I got 2 crazy people under the table. So to make a long story short, the prince comes over. He says, what are you? What are you doing here? He says, I'm a turkey. The prince says, oh, I'm a turkey too. So they become good friends, and they're just doing this for a few days. Finally, one day, the sage gives a sign. They throw him a pair of pants, and he puts on a pair of pants. They throw 2 pairs of pants. He puts on a pair of pants, and the king's son says, well, why? What are you doing? He says, who says a turkey can't wear a pair of pants? If a turkey's legs are cold, a turkey can wear pants. So the kid goes and he puts on a pair of pants too. And this goes on, so on and so forth. They put on a shirt, and then they start eating at the table, and they start eating regular food, and until finally the king's son is cured. And I love this story because a lot of times when we're dealing with whatever it is, whether it's kids who are being stubborn, people who are being stubborn, so on and so forth, we try to like, they're going to do it my way. I'm going to knock some sense into them. They're going to figure it out. You know, they're going to learn their lesson, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you got to just go onto the table and be the turkey together with them. And there's so many lessons for this. I could go on for hours, but in the interest of brevity, I'll stop now.
Thank you.
Great question. Great question.